Are you ready for the word? All right. We're going to be in Enoch 42, also in James chapter 3, and then in various other places. Enoch chapter 42 and James chapter 3 is where we will start. Wisdom does not abide in the earth. Wisdom does not abide in men. Wisdom cannot be found here under our dome. Wisdom is not in our education system. Wisdom does not abide in our universities. Wisdom cannot be found in the lectures of professors. Here among men, there's plenty of knowledge to be found. There is an abundance of information. There are thousands of theories. There are undeniable facts to be learned. There are master degrees and doctorate degrees. There are Rhodes scholars, and there are scholars in multitudes of other fields. But there is no wisdom among men, because wisdom is from above. James chapter 3 verse 17, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Why would James speak of wisdom as being from above? Because James understood what Enoch said in Enoch chapter 42 verse 1. Wisdom found no place where she might dwell. Then a dwelling place was assigned her in the heavens. Wisdom went forth to make her dwelling among the children of men, and found no dwelling place. Wisdom returned to her place and took her seat among the angels. So that's the reason James speaks of wisdom as coming down from above. It's important that we recognize that if we want wisdom, true wisdom, we have to ask for it. And it's important that we understand it's from above, that its abode is in heaven. Paul gave this admonition to the Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 18. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seems to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise. In other words, sometimes walking in the wisdom from above will make you look foolish to other people. Verse 19, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with the mighty one. For it is written, he takes the wise in their own craftiness. And again, Yahweh knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. The wisdom among men is vanity, it's emptiness. So what the world calls wisdom, Yahweh calls foolishness. And oftentimes what Yahweh calls wisdom, the world calls foolishness. The world has mistaken education, information, and knowledge to be equal with wisdom. They are not equal, they're not the same. Education, logic, knowledge, facts are all as inferior to wisdom as a firecracker is to lightning. You can be the most educated and smartest person under the dome and yet lack wisdom. Where there is information, logic, facts, and knowledge, there you will find the power of men. But where wisdom is, so abides all of the power of heaven. We should choose wisdom. That's why we're given this secret information in James chapter 1. This is a secret written to those who will read their Bible. James said, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of Yahweh. You can have it. Yahweh gives to all men liberally and upbraids not, and it shall be given to him. Notice it doesn't say if any man lack wisdom, let him read more books, or watch more YouTube videos, or get another degree, or do some meditation. It says if you want wisdom, ask for it, because it's from above. It has to come from Yahweh. It has to come out of heaven. Verse 6 says, let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavers is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. So here we see that in order to get wisdom, we have to do two things. What are the two things we have to do to have wisdom? The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. If you don't start there, you'll never get it. If you have no fear of Yahweh, you cannot have wisdom. The second thing you have to do to get wisdom is ask for it. There you go. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. That's the starting point. From there, we start asking for it and believing that we will receive wisdom from above. So if you want to grow in wisdom today and you're serious about it, then take a good look at the context in which James spoke those words. In James chapter 1, where he tells us we can ask for faith. In James chapter 1, verse 2, he says this, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into different temptations, divers temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith works patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." That is too awesome of a passage to just read and move on. Listen to what he said. Count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations. The word translated count there is a Greek word that means to lead something to or to command it. So he's saying, command joy. Command yourself to be full of joy when you fall into various sorts of trials. That's what that word temptation means. It means to put something to the test so as to prove it. So when you're being put to the test so as to prove you, start commanding yourself to be joyful about that. Trials come so as to prove us. If your faith has never been tested, there is no evidence that you have faith. Let me say that again. If your faith has never been tested, then there is no evidence in existence that you even have it. You can proclaim it, you can profess it, but until it gets tested and you walk through that test, it hasn't been proven. There's no evidence. So James said, when you come into a situation or a circumstance that's going to test your faith and prove that you have faith, start commanding yourself to be joyful about that opportunity. Hallelujah. When a situation arises where some action is required to prove your faith, command yourself to be cheerful. And then ask for wisdom on how to face that trial. And then, here's the important part, do what wisdom tells you to do. Right. It'll walk you through that trial. So let me make sure this is clear. Situations arise that test your faith. To face those tests, we begin by fearing Yahweh and not the thing testing us. That's where most people get tripped up. A thing comes to test them and they fear the thing that's testing them. No. When it comes, first thing you do is start fearing Yahweh more than the thing that's testing you. And then ask for wisdom, and then do what wisdom tells you to do. So we're going to look at a couple of examples of people who were wise when they faced their testing. Go to Exodus chapter 1. Verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on. Let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. And do you see how Pharaoh, this king, tried to use logic and basic information as if it were the same as wisdom? Here were the facts as he saw them. Here were the facts that he sought to communicate. The children of Israel were more than the Egyptians. They were mightier than the Egyptians. And so he concluded and wanted everyone else to accept that the wisest thing they could do would be to control the population of the Egyptians. That's the wisdom he put forth. And he used fear as a tool to get them to accept this wisdom. The world does that a lot. What if a war breaks out and they join with our enemies? He put that fear in their thinking. Therefore, verse 11, because he did this, therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor. That means to the point of breaking, extreme, severe labor. Verse 14, they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. So Pharaoh is able to coax the people of Egypt to do unholy and wicked things to the Hebrew people, people who have been their neighbors for years, people whom they've had no trouble with for years. This Pharaoh's convinced them it's in their best interest to do unholy things to these people by feeding them facts that would elicit unfounded and imagined fears. Through those facts and imagined fears, these people get convinced to severely mistreat the Hebrew people. And these people were made to believe that by doing so, by mistreating the Hebrew people, they were made to believe it was a wise thing to do. Verse 15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and you see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. So here we go. These two women are having their faith tested. You understand verse 16 is not a suggestion. It was not a suggestion. It is coming as a direct order from the Pharaoh himself. It is a decree that you cannot break. He said, this shall you do. That's a command. There's no room for discussion. So these two women understood the danger and the punishment that would come from disobeying that order. So what did they do? Verse 17. But the midwives, come on, what did they do? They feared Yahweh. What happens when you fear Yahweh? Wisdom comes. My. They feared Yahweh and did not, as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. Now you understand that all of Egypt could have done the same thing when they were commanded to make the lives of the Hebrew people miserable. They could have chosen the same mode of action. They could have feared Yahweh and said, no, sir, we're not touching them. Nobody twisted their arm. Nobody held a gun to their head and made them do it. They just chose to act upon an imagined fear. Here, these women are fearing Yahweh. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. So these two women, by fearing Yahweh, have positioned themselves to have wisdom. Pharaoh offered up a version of wisdom. The Egyptians embraced it. It was earthly, sensual, and devilish. That's what James tells us, that the wisdom that comes from the world is earthly, sensual, and devilish. That means that it comes from demons. Okay? It proceeds from an evil spirit. Well, these two women are not going to allow themselves to be ruled over by the fear of men or by wisdom that comes from evil spirits. They feared Yahweh. They received wisdom. Think about it. It does not matter what the punishment might have been for disobeying Pharaoh. They didn't care what that punishment was. In their hearts, that punishment paled in comparison to the punishment that would come from slaughtering newborn babies. And they knew it, so they feared Yahweh. And wisdom cried out and said to them, disobey that king. Refuse to comply to Pharaoh. Save those children alive. And they acted on that wisdom that comes from fear. And it angered Pharaoh. But so what? It's better than angering Yahweh. Right? Exodus chapter 1 verse 20. Therefore Yahweh dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared Yahweh, that he made them houses. The King James is about the only translation that translates this as houses. And it's not incorrect in doing that. This is the Hebrew word for house that's being used. But other translations see the implied meaning instead of the actual meaning to be more appropriate. So listen to some of these translations. The Complete Jewish Bible. Yahweh made them the founders of families. English Standard Version. Yahweh gave them families. Contemporary English Version. Yahweh blessed them with children of their own. The Good News Bible. Yahweh gave them families of their own. The International Standard Version. Yahweh provided families for them. That's a beautiful, powerful example of faith being tested and proven. Shiphrah and Puah did not panic. They commanded themselves to be cheerful. They feared Yahweh. They received wisdom. They did that which was right in the sight of Yahweh, and they walked in the reward that comes from doing so. But watch these foolish Egyptians in verse 22. Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. You understand these Egyptians by nature weren't wicked people per se. They were just ordinary men and women. But they became murderers of babies. How? By accepting the wisdom that Pharaoh presented to them. Pharaoh convinced them that it was wise to protect themselves by murdering babies. Is that not the same argument used for abortion today? Protect yourself is the wise thing to do. Murder that baby. The Egyptian people feared what might happen in some twisted, imagined reality, and it moved them to murder Hebrew infants. And they thought it was wise to do so. Many women have feared what a child might do to their lives in some twisted, imagined reality, and have murdered their infants and thought they were wise in doing so. True wisdom comes down from above. So when your faith is being put to the test, you need true wisdom. And when you get it, when you fear Yahweh and get it, ask for wisdom. Here's the way I like to think about it. Write this down, or at least etch it in your mind and heart so you don't forget it. Here's the way I like to think about it. True wisdom will always prompt you and tell you to take what's behind door number 3. Always. True wisdom will always have you take what's behind door number 3. When your faith is being tested, wisdom rises up and says, choose door number 3. Monty Hall never gave his contestants on The Price is Right any hint as to which door they could choose or should choose. Some of you are not old enough to remember that reference. But wisdom will always tell you, when your faith is being tested, wisdom will always tell you, choose door number 3. There's a very familiar story found in Daniel chapter 3 that perfectly illustrates this door number 3 concept. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. There were 4 notable Hebrew men who had been taken captive and were serving in Nebuchadnezzar's court. Daniel chapter 1 verse 6 says this, now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The name Daniel means the judge of Yahweh. Hananiah means the favored of Yahweh. Mishael means who is what Yahweh is. Now, that could be taken as a question. Who is what Yahweh is? But that's his name, and it could also be taken as just a statement. Who is what Yahweh is? That's who he is. Who is what Yahweh is. I like that. And then there was Azariah. His name meant Yahweh's help. Now, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah had their names changed to Belteshazzar and what else? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Sadly, that's the way we know them the best. Daniel, the judge of Yahweh, became Belteshazzar, which meant the prince of Baal. Hananiah, the favorite of Yahweh, was given the name Shadrach, which means the command of the moon god, Aku. Mishael, whose name meant who is what Yahweh is, was given the name Meshach, which means who is like Shak, the god of Venus. Azariah, whose name meant Yahweh is helped, became Abednego, which means servant of Nego, the Babylonian god of wisdom. It's actually a little sad that we teach our children Daniel chapter 3 without teaching them Daniel chapter 1. We need to convey to our children the true names of these men and what their names actually meant. Because when we call them Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we are conveying names that are connected with false deities as if they served these false deities. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were the favorite of Yahweh, likened to Yahweh, and helpers of Yahweh, and the helped of Yahweh, just as their names declare. So let's practice that. Who are the three Hebrew children? Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. We need to learn them by those names. In Daniel chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar has a golden statue erected that was 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. He called everybody together from every province to dedicate this new statue. He's going to have a dedication ceremony. He had written a decree, and this decree was read out loud to everybody that came to attend the ceremony. Here's what the decree said. Everyone from every area, every nation, no matter who you are, music will play. And when you hear the music play, you must bow down and worship the image, or you will immediately be thrown into a fiery furnace. And that decree was practiced that day. They played the music, people bowed. And from that day forward, it was obeyed by everyone from every race, every tribe, every nation. When their faith was tested, they all failed. Everyone except for Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. When their faith was tested, their fear of Yahweh would not allow them to abandon their faith, their service of Yahweh, and to bow before that image. So no matter how often that music got played, they refused to bow. This was reported to the king. Some Chaldeans came to the king and said, those 3 Jewish men that you put over the affairs of Babylon, number 1, they have no regard for you. Number 2, they will not serve your gods. And number 3, they will not bow to your statue. And this put the king into a fit of rage. He commanded that those 3 men be brought to him. In his fit of rage, he said to them, first of all, do you not serve my gods? In other words, y'all, you better answer for yourself. And number 2, he says, do you not bow before my image? Then he said, young men, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have our church musicians play one more verse of Just As I Am. And as soon as you hear them playing that, that is your clue. Because evidently you didn't understand the first time this decree went out. And so I'm wanting to make it perfectly clear to you, when they start playing, that's your clue. You will bow down and worship. Now, to make sure you fully understand the situation and make sure you fully understand my decree, here's what I'm saying to you. You only have two choices. You can bow down and worship, or you can sizzle and fry. That's the only two choices you get. Here's where most people mess up. Here's where they get their faith tested and they fail. They mistakenly believe what the Nebuchadnezzars of the world say, and they think there's only two doors. They think if I don't do what I'm being told to do, then I'm going to get destroyed. If I don't do what I'm being told to do, I'll lose my job. I'll get fired. I'll lose friends. I'll lose that promotion. I could lose my life. If I don't do what I'm being told to do, there's only bad things waiting for me. That's door number one. Door number two. When you can only see two doors, you have abandoned any fear of Yahweh, and you're not able to hear what wisdom would say. Wisdom will always come to you when you begin with the fear of Yahweh, and wisdom will always show you door number three. Without wisdom, you don't even know there is a door number three. Listen to what Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah did, and let us learn from them. They didn't hesitate. They immediately spoke up. In the King James Version, it says, "We are not careful to answer you in this matter." It's really far more blunt than the King James Version is able to convey. Here's what they said to the king. "Sir, your question, the way you framed it, does not require an answer from us. You're asking us to choose door number one or door number two. We consider that foolishness because we'll do neither." You see, we are not careful to answer you in this matter. They're saying we refuse to do either. We're not taking either one of those doors. They were saying we reject both options that you have presented to us. Instead, here's where we stand on the matter. We will not burn and we will not bow. We will not bow, we will not burn. That's what they said. Daniel chapter 3, verse 16. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we're not careful to answer you in this matter. If it be so, our mighty one whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king." So what they said to him is, mark this, sir. If it be so. If what be so? If it be so that you throw us in that fiery furnace, then we want you to know that the conclusion you've come to is not what's going to happen. Because if it be so that you throw us in there, our mighty one is able to deliver us out of that fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand. That's door number three. I love it. Verse 18. But if not, this is where people get tripped up. But if not, be it known unto you, O king, that we will not serve your mighty ones, your Elohims, your gods, nor worship the golden image which you have set up. People get tripped up by those words right there, but if not. I am convinced that those three words are misunderstood and misinterpreted by myriads of people. People read that and think they're saying that those words are saying, our mighty one will deliver us, but if not. If he doesn't, if Yahweh doesn't deliver us, then we're still not going to serve your Elohims. It's not what it says. Do you see how horrible that interpretation would be if it were so? If that was the correct interpretation, then you have to apply it to the entirety of the sentence that they had stated before. They said, our mighty one is able to deliver us out of that fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand. So if the if not applies to that, it has to apply to the whole sentence. They're saying, but if not, if our mighty one is not able to deliver us, and if our mighty one doesn't deliver us, well, they'd never say he wasn't able. It makes no sense. So that can't be the correct understanding. In verse 17, look at it closely now. In verse 17, they said, if it be so. If what be so? If it is so that you throw us into the furnace. If that's so, our mighty one is able and he will deliver us. Verse 18 says, but if not, it's being applied to the same subject. If not what? The same as verse 17. If you throw us in, our mighty one is able and will. Verse 18, but if not, if you choose not to throw us in, know that we're still not changing our mind. There's nothing that you can do to convince us to serve your gods or worship that image. Think about it. If there, but if not meant if Yahweh does not deliver us, there are a multitude of problems with that answer. One we've already gone over. The second one is this. Their statement, but if not, would make no sense if they're saying, but if Yahweh doesn't deliver us and we get destroyed in the fire. That makes no sense because the next sentence is, we still will not serve your gods. Well, of course not. If you throw us in there and we get burned up, we're still not going to serve your God. See, that makes no sense. Of course they're not going to. So the but if not is saying, if you choose not to throw us in, for whatever reason, you need to understand, you can come in here with money, you can come in here with gold, you can come in here whatever you want to. We're not bowing down and we're not serving your gods. Their fate's been put to the test. And what these men are doing is commanding themselves, just like James said, to be cheerful. They're fearing Yahweh and wisdom has come. And they're saying to Nebuchadnezzar, we clearly understand what you've said. There's no need for the musicians and another verse of just as I am. We're going to reject door number 1. We're going to reject door number 2. And we're going to take what's behind door number 3. And behind that door is our mighty one. He's able to deliver us out of that burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand. Notice that there is no wavering in that statement. Right. James said, do not waver. That word means to decide something and then stick with it. It means to decide something and to refuse to draw back from it. They have decided, we're not taking that, we're not taking that, we're taking that, and they will not back down from it. Wisdom said, choose door number 3, and so that's what they did. Now, before we leave this story, let me show you what the world and the devil will do when they see you in wisdom doing or choosing door number 3. Daniel chapter 3, verse 19. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury. I love it. The form of his visage was changed against Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore he commanded, or he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. Listen to this out of the Complete Jewish Bible. Nebuchadnezzar became so utterly enraged that his face became distorted with anger against Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He ordered the furnace made 7 times hotter than usual. His face was distorted. Have you ever seen anybody get so angry with you about your faith that their face changed? I have. It's devilish. But here's the point we want to see. Here's the question we have to ask. Why did Nebuchadnezzar have that furnace turned up 7 times hotter than it had ever been before? Was it not hot enough to kill them already? Right. So the only reason he's having it turned up is to try to create fear in them. Trying to get them to back down from the stance that they had made. You see what the enemy's doing? He's wanting one of them to say to the other, hey, Hananiah, I know that Yahweh was able to deliver us before, but man, this thing's never been this hot before. Maybe he can't deliver us out of it when it's that hot. That's what the devil wanted to happen. But if they don't doubt, they won't burn. Wisdom has prompted them to choose door number 3. It's safe at door number 3 no matter how hot that furnace gets. And that's the lesson that we need to learn. So here it is now. Mark this. When you listen to wisdom and you do the truly wise thing, regardless of how it looks, regardless of the knowledge, the logic, the facts, you ignore all of that and you just choose what wisdom tells you to choose, it might look worse for a while. Because the devil's trying to get you to back down. Because he knows if you do what wisdom told you to do, you're going to come out on the other side, not even have the smell of smoke in your clothes. Amen. You're going to have a testimony and evidence of your faith. Logic and knowledge and worldly wisdom says there's no way out of this. You better compromise. You better be smart about this. Just bow your knee. It's not that big a deal. The Egyptians murdered babies out of fear of an imagined scenario and thought themselves to be wise. And there are many people who murder their own faith out of fear of imagined scenarios, and they think themselves wise for compromising. Always listen to the wisdom from above. The wisdom from above will always have you choosing fear of Yahweh over any other fear, obedience to Yahweh over every other command, and choosing door number 3 over all the options that call for any kind of compromise. Now, the present day likelihood that you will ever be threatened with a fiery furnace or by a Pharaoh is not very high. But these principles work no matter what it is that comes to test your faith. And that's what we've got to do, is grab these principles. Now, as I proceed, I feel like Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, or 2 Corinthians chapter 11. And so I must do as he did. I must ask you to bear with me as I boast about Yahweh. It was in 1999 that the word of Yahweh came to me and told me to move my family to Texas and enroll in a Bible school. I didn't know a soul there. I had no job there. I had 4 children and a wife, and it was my duty to provide and protect. But the word of Yahweh came to me saying in 1999, go and enroll. In years past, I've always had a hard time describing how we hear from Yahweh. I've said, the Holy Spirit bore witness with my spirit, or I've said I felt like Yahweh was telling me, or I've said he awakened me with these words. But recently I've come to understand what the prophets meant when they said over and over and over, and the word of Yahweh came. And the word of Yahweh came. There's no way to explain that. When I say he spoke, that conveys a totally different idea because of the way we communicate with one another. It's hard to describe, but if you know, you know. The word of Yahweh came. It just comes sometimes. And so when it came, I began making my plans to obey that instruction. The first resistance I experienced as I made my plans to obey was from my dad. Son, do you have a job out there in Texas? No, sir. You know anybody out there? No, sir. Well, how are you going to take care of your family? I don't know yet. Son, you have a wife and children. This is irresponsible of you. Those were the facts. Everything he said was logical and based on knowledge. Everything. You couldn't argue with one word he was saying. Everything he said was a fact. Whoa. But wisdom was saying, just obey. Don't waver. Do what I'm telling you to do. So we began to sell off our stuff. What we couldn't sell, we began to pack up. The next opportunity that tested my faith and came for the purpose of derailing what Yahweh had planned for me was an opportunity, a wonderful, beautiful opportunity to get crossways with my pastor. He had been extremely rude and disrespectful to me and my family. And the man in me wanted to put him in his place. Because he was wrong, I was right. And normally I would have put him in his place. But wisdom cried out and said, it's a small thing to be right, let it be. Logic, knowledge, fact says, you need to tell him this. He needs to know that he did wrong. You need to confront him. But wisdom said, it's a small thing to be right. Let it be. I moved to Texas, enrolled in school. Before moving there, I'd sent a letter to the Bible school and volunteered, told them I'd work for 2 weeks, doing whatever they wanted me to do. You've heard this part of my story many times, but it's necessary to mention it here again. It's pertinent, and you'll see as we go. And that letter and that promise was based on the fact that I thought I would arrive with a certain amount of money, and it was going to be extra money, and I could survive for 2 weeks and work for them for free. But when I arrived, I didn't have any money. I didn't know how we were going to buy groceries. So on our second night in Texas, I told Marie, I know that I promised them to volunteer for 2 weeks, but I cannot. I have to find a job, and I've got to find a job quick. She agreed. The next morning, the word of Yahweh came to me while I was still asleep. It came to me in such a way that it woke me up. The word of Yahweh came. And said, a righteous man keeps his word to his own hurt. That word came because wisdom could speak, because I demonstrated that I feared Yahweh by moving to Texas more than I feared failure, more than I feared the disapproval of my dad, more than I feared the unknown. That word came from wisdom. A righteous man keeps his word to his own hurt. I'd never once quoted that verse. I'd never once used that verse in my life. I had read it, of course, but I'd never given any thought to it. But that was the word that woke me up before daylight that morning. So when Marie woke up, I said to her, a righteous man keeps his word to his own hurt. I told them that I'd volunteer for 2 weeks. I must go volunteer. She said, I agree. When those 2 weeks were up, school was starting that fall. I had looked into the classified ads and found a contractor was looking for somebody to do trim work in his home. You know, put up crown molding, hang doors, trim out windows, run base mold, those kind of things. I'd brought my tools from Alabama with me, had everything I needed to do that kind of work. I called him, we met, and told him what I could do. We agreed that I could work the hours that I wanted to around my school schedule, and he had paid me by the job. I was excited about that. As a family, we were excited about that. But that night, after I had already gone to bed, I got a phone call from a man in Alabama. First words out of his mouth were, "Have you got a job yet?" Boy, those words made me mad. Because I thought he was calling to chastise me for not working. Because a man ought to work. A man that doesn't work shouldn't eat. A man who doesn't take care of his family is worse than an infidel. Those are principles and truths that I believe in. So my jaw got tight, and I wanted to set that man straight, let him know that I didn't need that kind of chastising from him. I wanted him to know that I know how to work and I'm willing to work. So here was my response to him. I said, "Sir, I've worked hard all of my life." Push him back, putting him in his place. I've sometimes worked 2 jobs. Sometimes I've worked 3 jobs to take care of my family. He said, "No, you have. And you worked your way right out of the will of God. Now sit down, shut up, and see what he's got to say." Click. That was the length of our conversation. That was wisdom speaking through someone else whom I never thought wisdom would speak through. When I hung up, Marie said, "What did he want?" I said, "He told me not to take that job." And very nonchalantly, she said, "Then you better not take it." Logic spoke, knowledge spoke, fact spoke, and they all said, "You're crazy and you're wrong if you don't take that job. Your cupboards are empty, your refrigerator's empty, bills are coming due." But wisdom whispered, "Trust me." So I went the next day, sold all my tools that I had been using in the construction business, and that bought us a few groceries. School started, and within the first week of school, the custodian was fired. The dean of the school called me in, told me they had fired him, and asked me if I'd pray about taking that job. You've heard it. I know you've heard it. But you need to hear it again. I went home excited that that job had come open, and I knew that it had come open for me, and I was excited, and we talked about it, and we were excited. Look what Yahweh has done. Here's the job just for me at the school. But before daylight the next morning, the word of Yahweh came to me. Whew. I got up out of bed, went and sat down at our kitchen table and pulled out a piece of paper. And he gave me 5 reasons you're not to take this job. And so I wrote all 5 down. And when Marie got up, I showed her that piece of paper. And I said, "Here is why Yahweh told me I can't take that job." Again, I don't want to belabor the point, but when I got to school that morning, the dean of the school asked me, "Did you pray about this?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." "And?" I said, "And you're the authority in this place, and whatever you say goes. Man, if you want me to work, I'll work." You see what I was doing there? He said, that's not what I asked you. You see, it would have been real easy for him to say, well, great, I'd love to have you. Let's start. But he said, that's not what I asked you. I asked you if you prayed about it. I said, yes, sir, I did. And I pulled that piece of paper out, unfolded it, laid it on his desk. And I said, there are 5 reasons right there that Yahweh told me I can't take this job. He said, hallelujah, he told me the same thing. He was a whole lot happier about it than I was. Do you understand our cupboards were bare? We were down to nothing. And I just turned down another job. 2 weeks later, that school would launch a new church. October the 8th of 2000, we had our first service, and there were over 400 people in that service. October 11th, 3 days later, Dr. Jerry Savelle had his general manager call me into his office and ask me, if I would come on staff and serve as the associate pastor of that church. I didn't know Dr. Savelle. We weren't friends. But here's what I'm trying to get us to see this afternoon. When the word of Yahweh came to me in Odenville, Alabama, and told me to move, I had no idea what lay in store for me, but Yahweh knew, and if I would just listen to the instruction of wisdom, he'd get me there. That's right. I could not have even imagined there wasn't a church. Right. I couldn't have imagined there being a church and me being the associate pastor. Right. My dad told me I was being irresponsible. His logic and knowledge could not be argued with, but wisdom was saying, ignore the facts and just trust me. I had a marvelous opportunity to get crossways with my pastor. I had no idea what was going to happen in Texas. But when I was offered that position with Dr. Savelle at Heritage of Faith Christian Center, I called my pastor back in Birmingham and I said, Pastor, I just wanted to let you know that Dr. Savelle has asked me to be his associate pastor. And my pastor said, I know. He called me to talk to me about it before he asked you. Uh-oh. Wisdom said it's a small thing to be right. Let it be. Do you see how one decision could have muddied up the waters and destroyed a beautiful thing that Yahweh was trying to do? One bad decision. My life in Texas could have been total chaos and misery. I could have survived there instead of thrived there. I could have worked at night hanging doors and crown molding and spent my nights crying out to Yahweh, why have you forsaken me? Why did you send me here? Nothing is working out. If I had not listened to wisdom every step of the way, I would have missed what Yahweh was doing. I'm not bragging on me. I'm not patting myself on the back. I am acknowledging that I am not smart enough to have set all that up. That's right. And when I look back on it, all I can do is be in awe of Yahweh. When the facts and knowledge and logic were pressuring me to go one way, wisdom from above would come and rescue me and direct me in another way. Listen to this in Proverbs 1. Why don't you turn there? Proverbs 1. Proverbs 1 verse 20. Wisdom cries without. She utters her voice in the streets. She cries in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates, in the city she utters her words, saying, How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. In other words, wisdom wants to change the simple from being simple, scorners from being scornful, fools from being foolish. But they keep choosing that. Verse 23. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I'll pour out my spirit unto you. I'll make known my words unto you. Because I have called and you refused, I've stretched out my hand and no man regarded. But you have set at naught all my counsel, and would none of my reproof. Listen to wisdom. I also will laugh at your calamity. I was always one decision away from walking in calamity in Texas. One decision away. I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear comes. When your fear comes as desolation and your destruction comes as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you, then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. Isn't that true? Most people never think to ask for wisdom until they're drowning in their own distress. For that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of Yahweh. They would none of my counsel. They despised all my reproof. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way and be filled with their own devices. How many times in our lives have we found ourselves in distress and anguish and wanted to blame Yahweh for it? When way too often we are there because we ignored the cry of wisdom. So what's the answer then? The answer is that there's a difference between your faith being tested and finding yourself in distress because of poor decisions. So if you find yourself in distress because of poor decisions, the first thing you've got to do is come back and repent and say, Yahweh, I didn't fear you enough to obey you and listen to you and get wisdom from you. I repent. Then wisdom will start talking to you again. Proverbs chapter 1 verse 33. Whoso hearkens unto me shall dwell safely and shall be quiet from fear of evil. Whoso hearkens unto me shall dwell safely and shall be quiet from fear of evil. I dwelt safely in Texas. Not because of my own planning, not because of my own strength, but because in those situations I had learned to hearken. So here's the conclusion of the matter. Wisdom abides in heaven. It's not found in universities, in degrees, or in scholarships. It's not found in the minds and the hearts of men. Wisdom cannot and does not abide here. But wisdom can be found by those who will do two things. One, fear Yahweh, which always leads to obedience. Always. There is no separating fearing Yahweh from obeying Yahweh. So fear Yahweh. Number two, ask for it. There you go. Which requires faith. Because I can promise you, when you ask for wisdom in a situation, wisdom's going to tell you to do things that sound illogical, that don't make sense, that go against knowledge and facts. You got to trust wisdom. There are so many miracles throughout the Bible that happened because men listened to the instruction of wisdom, even when it was illogical to do so. I think we could say it this way. By wisdom, Moses stretched forth his hand against the Red Sea and told the people to go forth. By wisdom, Moses struck a rock and saw water come gushing out. By wisdom, Moses threw a tree into bitter waters and saw the bitter waters become sweet. By wisdom, Joshua and Caleb declared, we are well able to take this land. By wisdom, Joshua crossed the Jordan River on dry land and took the city of Jericho. By wisdom, David took off the armor of Saul and went across that valley to meet Goliath with nothing but a sling and 5 smooth stones. By wisdom, that widow in Zarephath gave Elijah her last handful of meal. It was illogical. It made no sense. The fact said, if you do this, you're going to die of starvation. But she did it anyway. By wisdom, Naaman dipped himself in the Jordan River. By wisdom, Yeshua fed the multitudes and healed the sick. Wisdom will have you do things that sometimes just don't make sense. And sometimes it'll look like it made things get worse. Stand steadfast. And wisdom says we ought to call those 3 Hebrew men by their Hebrew names. What are they? Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Looky there. That's good. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. His name is put upon you, so shall he himself bless